Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN The Hub's Fantasy Baseball Waiver Wire Show every Thursday at 4:45 p.m. Eastern, 1:45 p.m. Pacific. We are without Casey Vlad to the Bone Shinevold this week. He'll be back next week. But I am here with Ross the Boss.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ross the Boss. And I want to talk baseball waiver wire with you, cowboy. The deadline passed and gone, Dr. Ratner. Very disappointed on the action. I thought we'd see a lot more trades, a lot more people being moved around. There was a good handful of it, but not as much as I thought.
Wow. Well, it's interesting. I mean, to say that I'm disappointed at a time where players like Juan Soto were moved around or Josh Hader. I almost called him Bill Hader. I'm a fan of Barry, but Barry was not on the move. I mean, there was some big names moved around here and some big deals. So we're going to get into talking about the winners and losers. As always, I forget to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. It's good to see you all here. Guys, we have a couple weeks left of baseball waiver wire. I know you're at the end of the season. This is the push. And we've got to make sure that you guys stay on top of it. We're going to run you all the way through August. So August 25th will be our last baseball waiver wire show. And then you need to be prepared because we're jumping over to football. And in November, we're going to jump over to basketball. We're even going to cover hockey. So we got you covered across the board. But if you have questions during September of baseball, don't be shy about asking us. Just put it in the comments. We'll get back to you. There's always players to add. So, Ross, let's start with winners and losers of the trade deadline. Then we'll talk about players to add.
So the big winners, I have two teams that are winners. The rest were just like, okay, and then we'll talk about losers. The big winner team I have, drum roll please, Courtney. Okay, good job. Are the Philadelphia Phillies. They got Noah Sharngard, who we call Thor. Or
Syndergaard, as we call him in English.
They got Brandon Marsh from the Angels, who's an up and 24-year-old outfielder who has great potential, high ceiling. Unbelievable. The Angels got rid of him. I'm shocked. I think this kid has a lot of potential. And they got the closer from the Cubs, Robinson. I know he's 37 years old, but he's been solid this year. He'll probably be the Phillies closer. So the Phillies did well with those. I feel they really filled their needs with those three guys. They got a closer, got an outfielder, and they got a starter. And all they need is their hot stud to come off the DL, and I think they'll do a great playoff run. I don't know when he's coming back, but hopefully it's soon. But and the other team that I thought was huge, and it doesn't take a brain person to think about this, is the Padres. And we all knew San Diego was doing a big push. I told you guys he'll go to San Diego. Juan Soto, he's actually like a guy that comes around once every 10 years. I mean, this guy's a game changer. I can't believe the Nationals let him go, but I guess they had no choice. He didn't want to sign the big deal. So he's in San Diego. I see him there for a long time. I don't see him leaving. And now they have Tatis and Soto together. Oh my God. I mean, they're building a dynasty down there. It's going to be great. They also signed not Bill Hader, but they signed Josh Hader. That's his name, right, Dr. Dan?
That's right. I got you confused with Bill Hader.
Up before the show because you were making a joke. So Josh Hader, highest saves in baseball, 29, best hair in baseball, unbelievable. But Hader's now the closer of San Diego, which I think is great. And they also got Josh Bell from Washington to play first base, and they let Vaught go, and they also let Hosmer go, which are both good moves. And they also signed my guy, Brandon Drury, from the Reds, who first at bat, he hit a grand slam his first game with San Diego. So San Diego made a lot of unbelievable moves. What are your thoughts, Dr. Dan Ratner?
I mean, listen, you put it best when you said it doesn't take a brain person. Casey and I would have loved to. I wish he was here for that. He would have loved it. I'm going to tell him about it. But you're right. I mean, the obvious answer is that the Padres were the dominant team. I like what you said about the Phillies, too. I think they made some really nice adjustments. It was really interesting trade, the Josh Hader trade, by the way, because they switched closers. I mean, how often do we actually see that? I know Taylor Rogers is, he was questionable whether he was going to continue in that role, but you almost never see teams be like, let's switch closers. Like that does not happen. And meanwhile, the guy that the Padres got, listen, I think it's got to make them the favorites probably to win it all. I mean, do they have the starting pitching is still the question, but they add Juan Soto and they add, I almost said Bill Hader. Now I've got us all confused.
You messed me up.
They add Josh Hader too.
I mean, they have some pitchers there, but again, they're stacked when it comes to hitting right now. I mean,
you know what?
Unbelievable.
This is a deal that I thought was just kind of interesting. I didn't really see it coming. It was the Orioles dealing Jorge Lopez to the Twins. I knew the Twins were going to bring in somebody. I just didn't see it being him. And actually, I would have recommended Felix Bautista, which I'm going to do in this waiver wire show, as a pickup. But it seemed to me that the Orioles they're kind of in contention. They're exciting. I didn't expect them to deal away their closer, but
they were the losers side. I have them on my list for losers. They just didn't deal Lopez, the all-star closer. They also dealt Trey Mancini, who is like a poster child for the Orioles. He fought cancer and won. He's been a big name in the community there in Baltimore. I mean, they traded him to Houston, which is a huge get for Houston. I think that's going to put them in contention for the World Series. So I don't know what Baltimore's doing. I thought Mancini was part of the future. I guess not. He's gone. And I thought Lopez, who the fans loved, great, good closer, very solid, he's gone. And you know how hard it is to find consistent closers. Consistent, not closers, consistent. So, yes, Baltimore's one of my losers. The other one, for obvious reasons, is the Cubs. They had Ian Happ and Contreras. Both were on the block. They couldn't make a deal for either of them, which I think Contreras is at his peak. I felt that the time to trade him is now because he's having a good year and catchers are really hard to find. And Ian Happ, I know you're not a fan, but he's having the year of his life. So it's the time to trade both these guys, and the Cubs couldn't do it. That's how bad they are. But they did deal their closer away. They figured that out. And another team that was a weird thing, I wasn't quite understanding, but their Colorado's closer Bard, who we talked about on waiver wire, he's 37 years old. The only thing they did during the deadline is sign him to like a 3-year deal. And this guy is 37 years old, and they didn't do any dealings or wheelings at all. It was just weird. I don't know what they were thinking. And I know the Chicago White Sox fans are upset too. They did zero. I mean, their GM must have been asleep. They did nothing during the trade deadline. Zero. Zilch. Zero.
All right, Ross, let's talk about winners and losers from a fantasy perspective, since obviously people are here for the waiver wire and fantasy.
Yeah, I know.
And to me, the main winners in any waiver wire situation around the trade deadline tend to revolve around closers, because the guys get dealt, things change, and suddenly you could have 1, 2, or 3 new closers. Who are the new closers as you see it after these deals?
Well, Will Smith went to Houston. I know you're saying, he's not going to close. He could close some games. I think Will Smith can be a closer. I believe. Of course, Hader in San Diego will be. He'll be a closer. And Robinson in Philadelphia, he'll be their closer now. I mean, he's solid. I mean, the guy is 37 years old, but he can still hum about 100. So all 3 of those guys there's some other guys that are going to, like, we'll talk about a little later in the show, that are going to become closers. But again, if I had to pick out of the 3, of course, Hader is my top guy right now.
All right, well, let's dive in. We're going to get to catchers first. We're going to go right through. This is 60% and under in rostership in Yahoo. Ross, who's your catcher pickups of the moment right now?
So somebody that's an all-star who for some reason he's not over 50%. He's not even over. I don't think he's 40. Is Jose Trevino of the Yankees. For the past 2 weeks, he's in 333, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs. He's having a good year. He's playing for the Yankees, that solid lineup. And I don't know why he's not in more leagues. I don't get it. But he's a solid catcher. He's streaking. Pick him up now. And the other one we talked about before is Carson Kelly for the Diamondbacks, 393, 2 home runs and 5 RBIs the past 2 weeks. So those 2 catchers alone are must pickups if your catcher's not doing well.
I mean, I have to say Carson Kelly being rostered in 18% of leagues, I don't know what's happening. I feel like something is wrong in my brain that this is happening.
Well, I could tell you. I mean, he plays for Arizona.
It doesn't matter,
disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying is a lot of people just dismiss bad teams in fantasy, and it's a huge mistake, and it happens all the time.
Listen, well, I do want to make a plug for that. Look at the numbers. Don't look at the teams. I mean, Carson Kelly is ranked over the last 2 weeks. He's the 47th overall ranked player as a catcher. I mean, people should be all over this guy. He's clearly the number one pickup. I got a couple other guys to mention. Elias Diaz in Colorado. It's always great to have a player hitting in Colorado, especially when he's hitting well. MJ Melendez also. These are guys we've mentioned before. But this is the thing about the waiver wire. Don't give up on these names just because we're saying them again. The fact is, people aren't picking up certain players that have value. And you got to look for that value.
And I want to say Sean Murphy, but I can't because he's over 60% now.
That's right. He's 66% roster now.
I can't even say him anymore. He had 2 home runs in a game a couple nights ago. I was watching him.
But you know what? You still can say him, even though it's against the rules of who we tend to mention. He's 66% rostered. He's a good guy to add. Ross, let's move to first base. Who you got?
Seth Brown, our cover guy. Seth Brown, you're no clown. Seth Brown, he's the man. So Seth Brown, past 2 weeks, these are like Casey Scheinfeld softball numbers, 364, 5 home runs, 6 RBIs in the past 2 weeks. He also plays other positions too. He can help you in outfield also. But Seth Brown is a must pick up. He's streaking. Unless you have Judge or you have Olsen or something like that on your team, pick up Seth Brown immediately to play first for your team or outfield too. He's one of my major pickups this week. It's August, and you know who I like in August, who tears it up every year, is Joey Votto. In the past 2 weeks, he's only hitting 250. I know that, but he has 4 home runs and 8 RBIs in these 2 weeks. So I like Joey a lot. And my last one, we say his name every week. I'm just tired of saying it, but Nathaniel Lowe of the Texas Rangers. He's hitting 351 the past 2 weeks, 3 home runs. Again, I mean, if your first baseman's not performing, any 3 of these guys are great pickups.
And he was once known as Nate Lowe. I don't know. I guess he went over to Yahoo.
Like in Yahoo, they have him as Nathaniel.
No, I know. It's like he went to Yahoo and he was like, guys, I'm named Nathaniel.
Sometimes the mom gets involved and she says, I named him Nathaniel. I don't want him to call this Nate.
That's right. A guy that we've talked about a lot, but he's hot right now, is Rowdy Tellez. I mean, the guy is just crushing the ball all the time. When he's hot, you want to play him.
Is he 60? He could be close to 60, but yeah.
You know what? He just did get over to 61%.
Yeah, I mean, he's on the, doesn't matter. He could be available in your league. Again, he's a streaker. He gets in big streaks, and I talked about it last week. I love Teller. He looks like a softball player. I doubt he's ever done a sit-up in his life, but this guy can play baseball.
I still really like Josh Naylor as a back-end guy. I mean, is he going to stick on your roster? Maybe not, but I think that you could do a lot worse than him. We talk about Jose Moran all the time. He's now 63%, so we're cheating a little bit. He's also a third baseman, so I'd probably mention him there. But if I had one first baseman to pick up, I do have to say it would be Jose Moran. So I just want to say that. Ross, let's go to second base. I'm going to let you keep leading the way. I'll jump in on another position, but you start on second base.
So this guy plays for Houston. He plays second base, third base, shortstop, outfield. That's 4 different positions this guy could play. Eldemus Diaz, is that how you pronounce it, Mr. Ratner?
The way I say it is Eledmus Diaz.
Eledmus Diaz, hitting 349, 3 home runs, set 5 RBIs in the past 2 weeks, which is really good. But he's a utility guy, so he can play different positions. So if you need some guy to play utility, pick this guy up. He plays Houston. That Houston lineup is potent. They're a really good team. It's going to be Houston, the Yankees battling the American League for the championship, I believe. Sorry, Cleveland. Another guy that's streaking. He's a streaker, but I love him, is Colton Wong. This guy's hitting 447 the past 2 weeks. He has a stolen base and 2 home runs. He goes in streaks. I mean, I can tell you that right now. I've followed this guy for years. He's been on and off my team for years. But if you need a second baseman right now, pick up Wong. He's going to keep streaking. Pick him up immediately.
I was just going to ask you about Wong specifically. Let me ask you about another guy, Ross. What do you think of Tony Kemp? He's second base eligible. He's got outfield eligibility. The last 2 weeks, he's been hitting very, very well.
Another streaker. I mean, he's a guy that streaks. I mean, I pick him up, I drop him. I pick him up, I drop him. Again, he gets no press. He plays in a very small market team. But long story short, I like Tony Kemp. He's just a very streaky guy. So you want to get him when he's streaking. When he's cold, just drop him immediately.
Yeah, no, I'll say I would rather have Jorge Mateo. I think Jorge Mateo is likely to keep his value.
Shortstop. I have Jorge at shortstop.
Yeah, I mean, you can plug him in whichever position. And listen, when you're looking to pick players up and they have multiple positions, you got to look for what's the weaker position overall or what's the weaker position on your team. Yep. But Jorge Mateo is going to keep his value because he steals bases. And he's got the position.
And he's hitting 293 the past 2 weeks with 3 home runs and 9 RBIs. So
he's doing everything right now.
I mean, he's an all-inclusive guy that can do anything you want.
Well, let me ask you this: How about Ha-Seong Kim after the deal? Because C.J. Abrams got dealt.
Yeah.
Do you think his value goes up now?
The same. I mean, he's a guy who doesn't play every day. He comes in. He's a really, really good player. I mean, I like him. The problem with him is he just doesn't play every day, and it scares me. So I just keep him off my rosters because you want a guy that plays every day. You don't want some guy that's going to, pitch hit in the 9th inning. That doesn't help your stats at all. But I do like him. We'll see what is after all these trades and with all these other guys that are on the Padres. Let's see where he falls in, and maybe he'll get more playing time. You never know.
All right, we're going to move over to shortstop, and I'm going to lead off because there's somebody I was going to say for second base, but I realized he qualifies at shortstop. And to me, shortstop is actually thinner right now than second base. So, your point about Jorge Mateo may be particularly valid now because he qualifies as shortstop. But I've been beating the drum for this guy a long time. I totally realize that he has been not hitting well the last 2 weeks, but Nico Hoerner should still be rostered all over the place. I mean, he's going to come around. People panic too much about these slumps. I sometimes see people in chats and they're like, he's over his last 8. I'm like, that is such a small sample size. You should not be judging that. Even a 2-week period doesn't matter so much. Nico Hoerner's been doing it all season. I still have him as one of my top pickups at short. Who do you have?
Elvis has entered the building. I don't know if you've seen the new Elvis movie. It's unbelievable. You should
I haven't seen it yet.
Unbelievable. Elvis Andreas plays over in Oakland. He was in Texas last year. Elvis is hitting 333, has a stolen base in the past 2 weeks. Not much power, but he gets on base. He likes to steal. And, again, he's hitting way above the league average. And if your shortstop's cold like Nico, pick up Elvis because he's hot, hot, hot. Another guy that's hot, I mean, you talked about Colorado, how valuable these hitters are, especially in August in Colorado because the ball flies out of Coors Field, is Jose Iglesias. He is hitting 354 the past 2 weeks. Not a power guy. He can steal some bases, but he's getting on base like crazy. And again, Jose Iglesias in Colorado during the summer is a really strong pickup, especially for teams weak at batting average. So there you go.
All right, we got a couple comments coming in. This is from Chris Atwater, one of our very favorite people on the show.
He was really drunk at my wedding, but keep going.
Yep. Every time Ross pretends he was at his wedding, even though he was at mine, but it's become a joke that you guys hopefully continue to appreciate. So he asked about a couple shortstops here. He asked about Aledmus Diaz. He asked about Jorge Mateo, but he added one other name that we have not talked about.
Both of those, Chris, but yep.
Well, it's not his fault. I may have mentioned it too late. But how about Elvis Andrus? He brought up Elvis Andrus, shortstop. Ross, what's your take on Elvis?
Again, young shortstop, a lot of potential, high ceiling. He wouldn't make my to pick up list so quickly. But again, if you're in Dynasty, pick him up. If you're in one of these leagues where it's a huge keeper list, I like Jeter Downs too for Boston. He just sent him down. But again, you see the joke there, Downs down. But Andrews is definitely part of the whole new clan that's coming in the next 2 years that are going to take over that shortstop position. But I like him a lot.
All right. So you're saying Elvis has entered the building. He's also left the building in this case.
Yeah.
And you're saying the new Elvis movie is good. I'm not a big Baz Luhrmann fan, so I'm not sure. But I love talking about baseball players named Elvis. And meanwhile, Elvis Andrus, he's had some great seasons, and he can turn it on. So you could certainly do a lot worse than that.
Yep.
Okay, let's move to third base. Oh, actually, Chris Atwater has one other guy to mention, not a shortstop guy, but Leody Taveras. This is a guy
I love him. I've been talking about him beating his drum for the past few weeks. He's over 60%. But I play him in daily fantasy. I play him all the time. He plays in Texas where it's easy to hit home runs in the summer. And again, him and Seager are my two guys I usually start if I'm playing daily fantasy. But again, I love this guy. I think he has huge potential, and if you can pick him up for especially your dynasty leagues, he's a must keep. He's great.
Well, guess what? He's actually only 55% rostered.
Yeah.
Don't know how, but great pickup.
Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning it, Chris.
He steals too.
Yeah, keep, and he's been doing that for a long time, so we know that he can do it. Let's move over to third base, last infield position. Ross, I'll let you start us off. What you got?
Jamier Calladero for Detroit. I've been pounding.
Candelario. I will help you with pronunciation.
Last 2 weeks, 277. Last week he was like over 300, but 277, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs. He plays in Detroit. They're probably the worst team in baseball, but as we talked about, doesn't matter. I think he'll just keep on hitting home runs and they'll probably get the average up a little higher. J.D. Davis, you're saying, why am I bringing his name up? He was just traded from the Mets to San Francisco. Anytime players get a new scenery, I always think there's like a little jolt. You know what I mean? I always feel like there's a jolt. He's hitting 286 the past 2 weeks with a home run, but I feel his numbers are going to just get better and better playing on a new team. I think he just needed some confidence, and he wasn't playing every day in New York. So I feel for right now, it could be a good pickup. Evan Longoria is their other third baseman. I have no idea when he's coming back. He's hurt. I have no idea. But again, I like Davis a lot. So those two guys are my third base is the weakest position for me this week, but keep going.
Listen, third base has been the weakest position all year, hasn't it? I mean, it's really been tough.
Unless you have the top tier guys. I mean, if you don't have the top tier guys, I mean, I have Matt Chapman, and Chapman the past 2 weeks has been the highest performer at third base. I mean, he's been just tearing it up. So I've been really happy with my third baseman. But again, it's very hard to pick up consistent third basemen on the waiver wire. I agree with you 100%.
I think it's a great point. I mean, look, I'm looking at, there's two guys that are actually over 60% roster, but just barely. Alec Baum, and we talked about Jose Miranda. These are guys that I would probably plug in ahead of these other guys I'm going to mention. But there are players that are slumping right now that have shown really good signs of life. Yoan Moncada is one of them. I know that he's had historically a lot of slumping, but I still think he's worth taking a flyer on. Yandy Diaz has slowed down a lot, but you could still plug him back in and hope for the best. Josh Rojas is a guy that we've talked about a number of times in recent weeks. He's got eligibility at second base, third base, shortstop, and the outfield, so good to scoop him up. You got Isaac Paredes, who was our cover boy a couple of weeks ago, I think a month ago. And you still have Joey Wendell. You got Nolan Jones.
Joey Wendell and Isaac Paredes, they're both guys that can play multiple positions too. I mean, that's the beauty of those guys.
Right. So if you're having trouble, Ross and I totally agree on this one. Scoop up the guy with the position eligibility. It can help you a lot more. All right, Ross, let's move to outfield. Who do you have in the outfield?
I'll be nice because I know you're a big Cleveland guy.
Yes, you're going to let me do it. Thank you.
Even though you're not in Cleveland right now, you're on vacation. He's not kidnapped everybody. He's not in Russia.
That's right.
He's in the East Hamptons, living it up while I sit here and
listen. I made a note, and we can't even see the note. I'm in such trouble that you can't even see what it says.
Save me from. But yes, I mean, it's just so white behind you. It's like it looks like a prison.
It's all washed out.
But if you open that door, I'm sure I'll see the ocean. So I don't feel bad for you. Stephen Kwan of the Cleveland Guardians, 375, 4 stolen bases, has a home run also. I love this guy. He's a California kid. I love him. He's actually hitting really well right now. He's a streaker. Pick him up. If you need stolen bases, that's a great category to try to sneak up on your opponent on. Pick him up.
Well, that's the other thing. I don't even think of him as a streaker, especially because of the stolen bases. Stolen bases and average. This is where Steven and runs, by the way. That's
this player. I think the next player I want to say is one of my top pickups is Trent Grisham of the Padres. And we do a waiver wire thing every week on MFSN. We pick a player. We tell people that's my waiver wire pickup, and it was Trent Grisham this week. Trent, I know, is hitting 256, but the past 2 weeks, 256, 4 home runs with 8 RBIs. But he's going to really benefit having those guys in the lineup because they're not going to pitch to Soto. They're not going to pitch to Tatis. They're not going to pitch to Bell that much, but they are going to pitch to Grissom, which means Grissom will see a lot of fastballs and he'll get a lot of RBIs because these guys will be walked or be on base. It's going to benefit Trent Grisham. So pick him up now. Because he can win your league. This is a guy that can win your league, actually. That's how much I like Trent Grisham right now. Pick him up. And then the other guy I'm going to tell you, he's available like 98% leagues. Like no one picked him up. And his brother is probably one of the best basketball players in the NBA right now. I mean, it's unbelievable. Is Trace Thompson, and brother of Steph Curry. I mean, yeah. So no, brother of
Clay.
Clay Thompson.
Remember? His mom called him Clay? I'm not calling him Clay.
So
I did it again.
Clay Thompson, thank you. I don't know why I said Steph Curry, but Clay's hitting. Trace is hitting. I'm all mixed up. Trace is hitting 247, but he has 2 home runs and 8 RBIs for the Dodgers. He's playing almost every day. I mean, I love watching him play, and Clay comes to the games and he cheers right behind him. He's dancing up and down when he hits a home run. It's unbelievable. But Trace Thompson is somebody that's available in your league. I guarantee in your league, you can pick him up. But he is a streaker. Pick him up now. I think he's going to have a great August. And another guy that can win your league easily is Mr. Thompson.
I think Trace Thompson is a big potential pickup. Will he continue to do as well as he's doing? It remains to be seen, clearly. But he's got the potential to do it. We got a question coming in. We have a question about Chad Pinder for an outfield spot. So we know he's second base eligible. At second base, I'm more comfortable slotting in Chad Pinder. I'm not super comfortable playing him in the outfield, but what are you thinking?
So Chad, I talked about him last week, plays for Oakland, another small market team. As we talked about, I love Seth Brown too. Somebody has to play in Oakland. It's, they got rid of all their pitchers are gone, so might as well pick up their hitters. So I like Pinder. I mean, he's another guy that's available like 95% of the leagues. He's barely rostered, but yeah, at second base, I like him a lot. I think he has a lot of, he's been streaking. So as long as he keeps hitting, and when he gets cold, dump him. But right now he's kind of hot, so I would pick him up.
All right, now Chris Atwater has a shout out to you, Ross. He says, Ross the boss is right about Grisham. The San Diego lineup is absolutely nasty now. In fact, I owe Chris Atwater an email back because he when Soto got traded, he sent me an email. He was like, "Can you believe this?" And Chris, I want to talk to you
guys it's going to be a West Coast team. And you guys, no, he's going to go to the Yankees. No, he's going to. Everybody wants to play on the West Coast, where all the action is. People want to be here. They want to be in the middle of nowhere, like in Milwaukee or in Washington. They don't want to be in those places.
But isn't it amazing how San Diego has changed the kind of team they are? I mean, it was like 3 or 4 years ago that they were not adding anybody.
They hired a UGM. This guy's in his 30s. He's actually a big fantasy baseball player too. He talks about it. But yeah, they changed the whole morale down there. I mean, they're not the Dodgers stepchild anymore. They want to beat the Dodgers, and they're motivated to do it. And they have a great lineup. And I think if some of their pitchers can come through, they have a good chance.
It's a completely different team than it used to be. I'm going to mention a couple of guys in the outfield, and we'll move on to pitchers.
Great.
There's a wide range of kinds of players that you could pick up that could help you. But one of the types of players you can pick up is a young rookie who's starting to figure it out. I think Alek Thomas is that guy. I don't know if he's arrived totally yet, but he's got all the tools for it. He's batting .297 over the last 2 weeks. He just looks good to me. He's a 5-tool player. So he'd be my number one pickup of the guys you did not mention, other than Dylan Carlson. I keep talking about Dylan Carlson. He's not playing super well right now, but he's in a great lineup. He's getting tons of playing time. He's performed well historically. You got to look at the numbers. So he's another guy to pick up. Then there's 2 veterans who got traded, who I think are going to benefit from the trade. And you're probably going to disagree with me as a Reds fan, but I think Tyler Naquin is going to do well. Hitting in Cincinnati is great, but I think sometimes the trades shake things up and they get people going. You mentioned it yourself.
No, I think Naquin's going to have I think he's a perfect fit in New York. I'm not, no disagreement.
Yeah, so I think grab him. David Peralta is another guy that I think is.
I can't believe they traded him. I mean, I'm still in shock. Peralta's gone out of Arizona because he was their favorite player. I mean, he did this thing when he had a home run, and people loved this guy. I mean, he was like loved in Arizona, and they traded him pretty quick. So I agree with you, Peralta. Great player. Change the scenery can help him a lot.
Well, this shows you that the Jerry Seinfeld joke that we're rooting for laundry is becoming more and more true. I mean, David Peralta, he was just a stalwart there for years and years and years. So it's kind of sad to see them move on, but it's not only a business, but it's a business that is about winning. And Tampa Bay felt he would be a great addition.
There's something I want to ask you real quick about, and then we'll talk about pitchers.
Okay.
Whit Merrifield was traded to Toronto, and he was totally against getting vaccinated. So Canada, because they're a backward country, won't let you play unless you get vaccinated. Don't ask why. the rule doesn't make any sense. I mean, I can argue anybody about it, and I'll win every time. So don't think you can argue with me. You won't win. So he can't play home games. They're on the road right now. He's playing for Toronto. He's on the road, and but when they come back home or in the playoffs, what is this? Is he going to get vaccinated? The rumor is yes. But again, why would you trade for somebody when they're not vaccinated and they can't play home games? It makes no sense to me. I don't understand.
Well, listen, I mean, it seems to me that it would be fairly I would guess that they had a conversation with him.
Okay.
And they said, hey, we want to bring you in, but obviously this situation. I mean, do you really think Toronto would do that? I don't. I think they investigated.
I've seen stranger things. There was a quarterback that plays for Cleveland that has a guaranteed contract of $240 million that he might even play this year. I mean, it's craziness that's going on in sports.
Quarterbacks in the NFL is a whole other thing, and Deshaun Watson is a whole other thing.
I don't want to say his name. I don't want people to know. I'm just kind of.
He's like Voldemort now. He who shall not be named. We're going to get to all of that in our football waiver wire show. By the way, our football waiver wire show is going to be Mondays at 8:15 p.m. Eastern, 5:15 p.m. Pacific. We want to get as many of the games in as possible before we start recommending who to pick up.
And I've been doing a show the past few weeks with The Hustler, and we talk in depth about fantasy football. We talk everything you can imagine. We gave our top 10 in every position already. You can go back and watch it. This week coming up, Tuesdays at 3 o'clock Pacific, Tuesdays at 3 o'clock, we're talking about handcuffs, not the handcuffs you put on your wrist, but handcuffs that are running back handcuffs that you should take certain running backs in case your star running back goes down. We're talking about it in depth on Tuesday.
That's true. Listen, backup running back so important in football. But back to baseball.
Yep.
We're going to stay on task. Let's move to starting pitching. I'm going to mention two guys at the top of my list, and then I'm going to let you do kind of the deep dive. First of all, I hope you don't mind my stealing Hunter Green. As a Reds fan, obviously you'd be excited about him, but he's really pitching very well right now.
I've watched him every start he had. I watched.
Well, he's starting to figure it out, but I also have seen an interview with him. He's a really smart guy. I feel like he's going to figure it out, and I think he's starting to figure it out. I would scoop him up immediately. He's 41% rostered.
And Dan, really quick, tell us his. Because you love this stat, his innings compared to strikeouts. Tell us that real quick. His strikeouts per 9 is 10.22, and you want it to be above 9. That's very good. But his strikeouts to walks is 14. He's finding his control, and that's big trouble for. I mean, this kid, he's born and raised right near me in California. I saw him pitch in high school. I know his dad. Unbelievable arm. He does get rocks sometimes. The ERA is still kind of high. But his last outing, I believe he pitched 6-7 innings and gave up one hit. I mean, this kid is going to be really, really good. He's the future in Cincinnati. But you're 100% right. If he's available in your league, if you need strikeouts and if you need anything, just pick the kid up. He's doing great.
All right, now another guy that I was going to mention, this guy has surprised me, but I want to give a shout out. Groovy T has joined us, and he's saying Detmers is looking great. So Reed Detmers. He is looking great. I mean, I didn't buy it.
The Angels are just giving up the season with Trout hurt, and they trained.
It's true. He's not going to get you a ton of wins.
Schoengar. I mean, they're trading away like their whole team. I mean, just
all right. But his strikeouts per 9 is 13.5.
I saw that. His ERA is over 4, but keep going.
No, over the last 2 weeks, his ERA is 0.75.
Yeah, but for the season, I'm talking about. Keep going.
Sure. And meanwhile, he had a no-hitter mixed in there. So, his numbers are all crazy. But listen, I took a look under the hood of Reed Detmers, and it didn't seem like he was worth the pickup. He seems to be delivering. So I would say pick him up and run with him the rest of the year. Only 41% rostered. Ross, I'll turn it over to you for some other guys, and then we got some comments coming in.
So Trent Lyles of Baltimore, 2-0 the past 2 weeks, 2.12 ERA. Pace of Baltimore, that stadium is built for pitchers, especially home pitching. If he's pitching at home, pick him up, start him. He's pitching really well. I like this kid, Lyles. I think he'll be one of the top pitchers in Baltimore for many years to come. Another guy I like is Broxton Garrett of the Boston Red Sox. He's another future guy. He's been 26 strikeouts in 16 innings. 26 strikeouts in 16 innings for the past 2 weeks, he passes Dan Ratner's test. But I know he's 1-2 the past 2 weeks. Doesn't matter. This kid will get you strikeouts. He's getting better and better every start. Those are the two hot young guns I like to pick up for the week.
All right. Listen, first of all, It's not Trent Lyles, it's Jordan Lyles. That's just the only reason I say it, I'm not picking on you, Ross. I'm just saying we need to make sure they know the names to pick up. And Braxton Garrett, meanwhile, is on Miami. I think you have
Miami on that, right?
Okay, just making sure you know. Okay, so I agree with that. I also think that hold on, I was just looking at the list and my screen got switched. So Garrett Whitlock, he's 57% rostered. I still think he's a great guy.
We'll talk about him. We'll talk about him now because you brought his name up. So he's been doing relief pitching for Boston. He has a bunch of saves the past 2 weeks. 2 saves.
That's right.
ERA 1.29, but he's been pitching like 2 inning saves. So you bring him in the 8th and he pitches 2 innings to get the save, which was great.
And you know what? That's so valuable for teams when you can pile up multiple innings in middle relief. Yeah. They're only going one time through the order. They're going to tend to do a lot better.
So Garrett Whitlock, I believe he's the new Red Sox closer. I mean, he trades closers all the time in Boston. So I believe he's healthy. I believe he'll be the closer for at least the next 2 weeks. And he was on my list for relief pitchers. But yes, great pick.
All right. I also still am liking Spencer Watkins. He doesn't strike out quite enough guys for me, but I like him as a pickup. We got a couple of observations from Chris Atwater. He says Luzardo is back. Jesus Luzardo. Love it? Ross, what do you think? Luzardo.
He's been not pitching great since he's been back. He's not gonna. I wouldn't pick him up. That's all. That's my recommendation. Don't pick him up.
Okay. Chris also has these questions: is Ashby a keeper? Is George Kirby a keeper? By the way, he says he loves your take on backwards country.
How many keepers can you have in your league? I wouldn't. Kirby probably not. I would not keep him. Who's the other one?
Aaron Ashby.
So let's say it's 6 keepers, like in the league that we know.
Yeah, not with 6 keepers, but let's say
I'm saying 6 because we're all in that league together. So either of those guys would not be a keeper on my list. But if it's like a 12 people keeper, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think Kirby probably is the one that I'd most be looking at, even if it was 12. By the way, he says he loves your take on the backward country of Canada. I apologize to Canada for Ross's behavior. And at the same time, this is a tricky topic, especially for Whit Merrifield. Okay, Groovy T has an observation as we move into relief pitchers. Perfect timing. He said Felix Bautista should be getting save opportunities with Lopez gone. Groovy T, Felix Bautista is my number 1 pickup at relief pitcher because he's pitching really well. He's the clear 8th inning guy moving up to the 9th, and it's on a fairly winning team. Ross, what do you think? 500
team for namesake. Yeah, he was on my list too. I mean, he's somebody that benefited from Lopez leaving the city of Baltimore. Yes, I'll totally pick him up if he's available. Again, Baltimore is not the losing team that we all remember from last year. This team is really well run, and I believe they'll hopefully finish over 500 at the end of the year. We'll see what happens.
All right. Now, we also have a question coming in. This is from the Rangers bullpen. What about Jonathan Hernandez? Groovy T wants to know about this. What do you think about him?
He could be the winner, or he could be the loser. Hernandez has a lively arm. I mean, I've seen him pitch many times. He's a very, very good arm. I don't know if he's going to get that closer role. We'll see what happens. It's a very weird situation what's going down on there.
What I like about the question, though, Ross, is that you have to speculate on some of these guys, especially look if you're really looking for.
I would not pick him up. That's me.
I will say this: there's other relief pitchers I'd be quicker to jump on. Felix Bautista being at the top. I'm going to mention a couple others. Ryan Tepera is one.
I have Ryan too. Yep.
I mean, it's not a surprise that the Angels dealt their closer. Raisel Iglesias was a great trade chip. And interesting to see what will happen at the back end of that Atlanta.
He went to Atlanta? Where did he go?
He went to Atlanta. He went to Atlanta. So I think he's going to be splitting save opportunities, which it decreases his value, but he's still great to have.
I think he's set up. I don't think he's going to be closer there at all.
I don't think so either. I think he will get some save opportunities, but it'll be more like Will Smith was. So I think
he does Minter. I mean, there's a couple guys I like better.
But remember I said this about the Braves. I could see them adding some nasty bullpen guy because they know if you've got 3 great bullpen guys, you shorten the game.
That's what Houston did a few years ago, and it totally worked. So, yes.
Okay, now Chris Atwater, a Red Sox fan, says this. Don't pick up any pitcher from the Red Sox, no matter what these guys say. So he's warning you off the Red Sox. He knows the inside scoop. Now he has a question. is Blake Snell back to his best? He looks great recently. What do you think?
I was looking at Blake because he's over 60%. He's not under, so let's not pretend. He's a guy that could be potentially really, really help San Diego to get to the World Series. He definitely has the arm to do it. I would say yes. I like Blake Snell. I would ride that train. Good idea.
All right. Let's jump back into relief pitchers. I mentioned Ryan Tepera because I think he is going to take over. Also, if you have a lot of room at the back end of your team, add the entire Oakland bullpen. We don't know what's going to happen. But I mean,
they'll have 2 save opportunities in 2 months.
Listen, first of all, they'll have plenty more than 2 save opportunities. You could get a good 12 to 15 saves out of them the rest of the season.
Maybe,
and meanwhile,
that
could be the difference. Listen, you've got maybe a week to test it out. Pick up Zach Jackson. I pick up Zach Jackson and AJ Puck. If I had room for just 2, I'd pick up those 2.
I have Puck in our league, so I like him. He's been throwing really hard balls lately, and he's again 0 ERA the past 2 weeks, so I like him a lot.
All right. Anybody else to add?
So Lou Trevino pitched for the Yankees. They got him from the A's. Another guy that went to the Yankees from the A's. So Lou Trevino, I have a feeling. I get feelings that he could be the closer in New York in the next 2 weeks because Clay Holmes has been not looking great. I mean, he's been looking mediocre at best, and I have him in our league. So I'm talking the truth here, and I feel Trevino can steal that job from him. You heard it from me first, Ross, the boss. And Trevino came in, I saw him pitch, I think 2 nights ago, and he shut him. He was great. I mean, they were belting whoever was before him. He came in and just closed it down. So I like Trevino a lot. We talked about Kyle Finnegan and for the Nationals. He's been consistent the past 2 weeks. His ERA is under 2. He has like 2 or 3 saves. And you mentioned Garrett Whitlock. I know Chris Atwater loves the Red Sox. He can tell us the same thing. 2 inning saves. That's what the Red Sox do with this guy. They bring him in for 2 innings. He gets the save, and that's it. So out of those 3 guys, it can really help your bullpen. Any 3 of these guys. So pick them up.
Really interesting take on Trevino. I think a lot of people are cutting him immediately because they think he's not going to have the role, but you see it differently. Let's see how it plays out.
I mean, Holmes, if you look at his past performances, you can look right now. He's been his control's been bad. He's been getting rocked. I know his ERA is still good for the season and all that, but the past couple.
Yeah, but you got to look at how it is overall. I mean, Trevino's numbers are terrible for the season. It was all from the start.
And the New York media, they destroy people. They love destroying pitchers when they're down. So
sure. All
that stuff being said, Trevino could be the closer, and Casey Scheinfeld, who's not here, he's a huge Yankee fan, will probably agree with me. We'll see what he says.
All right, now listen, we've got a very intelligent audience, and here's a good representation of that. Groovy T notes this. Keep in mind, Oakland won't be blowing teams out. Their wins are going to be close games. So I agree with them. If they're going to get wins, they're going to be in save opportunities almost all the time. We got a couple more questions coming in. Chris Atwater says, is Jason Adam taking over in Tampa Bay? Ross, what say you? Let me weigh in, actually. I don't think he's going to hold on to that. I mean, and you know why? You know I'm a strikeout guy a lot of the time. That's actually part of his problem. He's not striking out enough guys. I don't think that he's got what it takes there. We got a couple other observations. Chris Atwater says, we talk a lot about rookies. Who's standing out to you as rookies? We're going to need to wrap up here. Let's finish up on this.
I love Michael Harris for the Braves, even though he's not hitting great the past couple of weeks. Doesn't matter. He steals. He hits home runs. I feel he's going to have a strong August. So for me, I really like Michael Harris of the Braves right now. I wish I can really say somebody else, but he right now is my front runner for Rookie of the Year. But I could be wrong. We'll see what happens.
All right. We have an observation about closers, and this is one thing that can happen to people in this trade deadline. Groovy T says, I had Joan Duran, and Sir Anthony Dominguez. Both the Twins and Phillies traded for closers at the deadline. Yeah. That's definitely a bummer. It can happen. But listen, it's a crapshoot. You speculate on these things that easily could have happened that they would have been winners in this trade deadline. Last question. Olivia's an Alley Boy 760 asked, Segura back from the IL. Is he a must add? He's available. Ross, weigh in here.
He's not a must add. It depends.
Definitely not a must add.
Not a must add. I mean, it depends on your team and how deep you are. I would not pick him up. I mean, unless he starts streaking. but let him get off the DL. Let him start playing a little bit. Let's see what his stats are. But don't pick him up just because he's out there. Because
that being said, he's certainly not a terrible pickup. He was running and hitting for power at the same time.
I know. But sometimes players come off the DL, especially a long time. It takes them a little while to get back in the groove. I get it. And we're getting closer to playoffs, so you don't have a couple weeks luxury for these players to get adjusted. You got to win now. That's the reason we're doing this whole thing. So you drop the players that aren't producing. You pick the players that are winning. If you want to be a winner, you got to join Ross's Army of Champions. If you don't join Ross's Army of Champions. I don't really care. But I'm just telling you right now that to win fantasy sports, you got to get the player that's producing, not the player that's potentially going to do it. So yes, don't pick up Segura.
It's a really good point. At this point in the season, you really want to look for the guys who are hot right now. You just don't have as much time to build.
I mean, hopefully, let's say 12-person league, top 6 teams make playoffs, and you have the 5 or 6 spot. So you got to win every week, so you know you're going to be in the playoffs. If you have a bad week one week, you could be out of it. And again, let's say you're one of the top teams, you want to get that bye week. So you don't want to play around with players that are coming off DLs and are not hitting well. You want to get the team that's going to produce the best, and that's what we're telling you to do right now.
All right, we're going to wrap up on this. Chris Atwater is pointing out Jason Adam is a 10-plus K per 9 pitcher, by the way, in general, but he's got a dip the last 2 weeks, Chris. So we need to check out what that is. You may be totally right, and it's worth saying. Guys, tune in next week. We got the same time, Thursday, 4:45 p.m. Eastern, 1:45 p.m. Pacific. We'll be here. We're going to keep it up for another couple weeks. August 25th is our last waiver wire for baseball, but keep putting your comments below. We'll help you throughout September anyway. And check out our football waiver wire show, Mondays, 8:15 p.m. Eastern, 5:15 p.m. Pacific. Check out Ross's show with The Hustler. It's great stuff, Ross. You keep it up.
3:00 Tuesdays. Watch the previous shows. We talked about every position, and now we're going to talk about handcuffs. So it sounds like a sexual show, every position and handcuffs. I don't know. But, I mean, long story short, yes, check it out. We have fun. We make great predictions, and we're going to help you win fantasy football if you want to be a winner.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Tune in next week. Check us out and put your comments below. We love to talk fantasy sports with you. Thank you for joining us.
Kill Cliff Octane. New flavor. Laser Lemon. Plus 125 milligrams of clean caffeine. No sugar.
25 milligrams of CBD.
Meow available at KillCliff.com.